I think it's time we stopped this facade and took off the emperor's clothes and let us see America naked and what it's really capable of and not capable of, and find out the truth about America.
I didn't see what caused it or if there was an impact.
So you have no idea right now?
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit. Right. Oh my God! Another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. We are here in Vancouver today, and I am joined by the one and only Ed Asner. He's an American actor, a voice actor, and a former president of the Screen Actors Guild. Now, many people may recognize Ed for his portrayal of the character Lou Grant in the Mary Tylor Moore Show. He played that same character in other shows as well, like the Lou Grant spin-off and also Rosanne, to name a few. And more recently, he played the role of Carl Fredricksen in the Academy Award-winning animated film Up. And throughout his career, he's been nominated for 20 Emmy Awards, of which he has won 7 of them. But one of the things you may not know is that he sits on the board of directors of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. And just earlier this month, the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, a group representing families of the 9/11 victims, filed a petition with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to push for an investigation into the crimes of 9/11. The committee states that they have conclusive evidence that explosives were planted and detonated in the World Trade Center buildings, and that this is the actual reason for the collapse of the towers. So, Ed, I want to first commend you on your on being courageous enough to speak out about this. Now, maybe to start things off, you can...
You say foolish enough.
Foolish, perhaps. I mean, a lot of people in Hollywood would probably fear, not getting casted anymore for speaking about something like this. So what would you say was the reason why you got into the 9/11 truth movement, as we call it, in the first place?
Well, it just seems the lies are so voluminous that you don't know where to begin to tear down the fiction that a bunch of crazy Arabs flew some planes that they didn't know how to fly into buildings that couldn't come down from that effect.
To this day, there is still a lot of unanswered questions about what happened that day. What would you say?
Because our government will not permit the appropriate inquiries, and even if they did, all too often in the past, the inquiries have been foiled. Well, the inquiry that was made on 9/11 was savaged, was twisted, was false. So you can't guarantee that the government will commit to a thorough expose, or that they will even get there. They will prove inefficient at getting there. So you can't trust government. I don't know who you can trust to launch such an inquiry. A very rich man might be able to do it if he wanted to try to make trouble for the government, but I don't think they'll want to spend their money that easily.
Well, I think the independent inquiry, which you are on the board of directors of, is a great start. And in fact, the petition that was launched stated the following: the Lawyers Committee has reviewed the relevant available evidence and has reached a consensus that there is not just substantial or persuasive evidence of yet to be prosecuted crimes related to the use of pre-planted explosives and or incendiaries on 9/11, but there is actual conclusive evidence that such federal crimes were committed. So What would you say to this date are still some of the unanswered questions surrounding 9/11 that you still have?
Oh, God, there's so many. First of all, the Arabs flying the planes, I don't think any of them were qualified to do so. They either failed or poorly performed when they took the tests or when they studied. They were not truly Orthodox Arabs in the fact that they partied and drank and smoked and had a good time. So they were not religious followers of their religion. No building has ever burned down from fire, such as the high rises that the Twin Towers comprise. Most people don't even realize that Building 7 came down. 3 buildings came down. That it was a 47-story building, I believe. It was separated by 100 yards from any of the Twin Towers. Mm-hmm. It was also the home of most government intelligence in New York at that time. So people tend to think that it was brought down for what it contained, even more than adding to the fuel of Arab terrorists. The steel was shipped out immediately after the tragedy. That steel was burning 10 days to 2 weeks later, still burning from the heat applied to it. Such heat is not acquired from a burning building. The furnishings in the rooms of the buildings would require something like 500 and something temperature to ignite, to burn, for the building to burn, for the steel that was implanted in those buildings to burn. It would take something like 1,500 to 2,000 degrees temperature to get that steel to such a heat. That steel was still burning, as I said, 10 days to 2 weeks later. The only way to achieve steel like that is with thermite or thermate, traces of which were found in abundance even after the explosion. It reacts to sulfur and creates even greater intensity by sulfur in combustion. Thermate is not found normally. It has to be applied, brought to the place, just like explosives must be brought to the scene of the crime. Those buildings could not have toppled from the fire. The girders could not have exploded outwards as they did in the case of the fire. Traces of thermite and thermate were found afterwards in adjoining apartment buildings in the area. The buildings were leveled to such a degree, the reports of explosions by denizens of the Twin Towers, the tragedies that resulted in the deaths of 3,000 people, 3,000 citizens of the world were destroyed in this monstrous attempt. And out of all the debris that was destroyed, incinerated, a single passport was found at the tragedy belonging to one of the terrorists. My.
Yet they somehow couldn't find the black boxes.
Oh yes, well, anywhere. The Pentagon is, to me, a lie. An 18-foot hole left by a supersonic plane.
I mean, it's such a massive lie that's being perpetuated on the American people. But for what purpose is this? I mean, does it fully have to do with launching the war on terror?
I think so. Plus the fact that the Bush came in with 7 league boots, making changes in government and our governance. And at the point of the Twin Towers, his effectiveness was beginning to wane. I think it was done to jack up, divert attention, and to jack up his performance. We got a what is our act called to?
The Patriot Act?
The Patriot Act. 650 pages, something like that. Most of the legislators in Washington, those who can read, that is, did not get to read the Patriot Act, which was passed so soon after 9/11, 650 pages. And it must have been amassed prior to the act, just in terms of due diligence. And it was a very thorough act, which wrestled us into tight security by our government. 650 pages, and even the committee heads in Congress were given copies, but I don't think they had time to read it.
Yeah, as I understand it, even people who were involved with the official investigation, the 9/11 Commission, some of them even were admitting that they were being blocked in certain areas of the investigation, not able to do a proper investigation. And it seems that not only on the effect of the civil liberties of Americans, but this also seemed to have paved the way for broader wars in the Middle East.
It certainly paved the way for that. And the New York Times, which I read regularly, at the time contributed heavily to that impetus to war.
Now, the inquiry, which you were on the board of directors of, they just launched this petition a few weeks ago. What would you say the main overall objectives are? What are the goals of this inquiry?
There are so many unanswered questions. The Arabs who were celebrating in New Jersey, who left shortly after, the Israelis who were dancing as well, from what I hear rumors tell me, they have not been investigated, and they were regarded to be young members of Mossad. I don't know how true that is, but it should be investigated. Why such benevolence was fostered upon the Saudis by our government, immediately worrying about their pure persecution and freezing all air travel except for them. I mean, isn't that enough to make you suspicious? I don't think any government has ever been that benevolent to any minority.
It also seems remarkable they somehow seem to know that Osama bin Laden was the culprit from day one.
Yeah.
You know, the media seem to have already known that he was enemy number one.
Yes, and how wonderfully efficient that the kill teams that found him quickly eradicated him when they did find him, so that we could never hear Mr. Osama give us his version of the story.
In fact, I interviewed the father of one of the members of the SEAL Team 6 who was involved with the bin Laden raid, who was later killed in a helicopter crash. In fact, a number of the members who were involved with that raid died in a helicopter crash soon after. So it seems there may be a cover-up going on there as well.
Jesus Christ. I hadn't heard that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the story that we've been given about bin Laden's death, I'm certain is also being largely fabricated by the American government.
I'm sure.
So I guess, do you have any final thoughts or messages, or words of advice, anything like that for the American people when it comes to this tragedy that has changed the world forever?
We have a history. The battleship Maine is a mystery. The Gulf of Tonkin is another challengeable mystery. You can create suspicion if you wish about Pearl Harbor. My supposition there is that we knew, or Roosevelt knew, that the Japanese had to respond with an attack. They just didn't know it would be Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Manipulation by governments is traditional. The myth about America makes it difficult to believe such myths exist about our engendering crimes. I think it's time we stopped this facade and took off the emperor's clothes and let us see America naked and what it's really capable of and not capable of, and find out the truth about America.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, maybe the fact that false flags seem to be their modus operandi when it comes to gaining control. Yeah. All right. Well, once again, I want to thank you for speaking out, especially as someone with a Hollywood background. I sometimes wonder if there's other people in the business who are aware of these lies coming from the government, but maybe are afraid to speak out of fear of not being casted anymore or not receiving their paycheck.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I found just trying to talk to people of varying stripes in education, to tell them about 9/11, to talk to them about it, to possibly convince them, and to be greeted by such goggle-eyedness
Mm-hmm.
that I was truly a loony. So I don't try to convince anybody anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest, you were a trailblazer in that regard. You started this around 2004, before it was cool, so to speak, to be a 9/11 truther. So you're much so a pioneer. Not a lot of people were talking about 9/11 truth back in 2004, like you were.
I felt it the day it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing has diminished my conviction.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're getting closer to that time where we can find that truth, especially for the victims' family members who still have their unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be nice to have them have a trial to satisfy their grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's about time the American people allow for an independent inquiry, such as the 9/11 Commission independent 9/11 inquiry that you are a part of.
But I mean, it's an inquiry which would mean that the gates would have to be unlocked. The safes would have to be opened.
Mm.
The power of indictment would have to be available to force people to tell the truth. They haven't been forced to tell the truth.
Do you think that could happen under the current administration?
Oh, no.
No?
No, absolutely not.
Because, I mean, Donald Trump
I'm looking
once
to the
alluded...
next administration if that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, as I understood it, back in the day, Donald Trump on 9/11 used to talk about the fact that it appeared to be controlled demolition, but now he doesn't seem to want to touch the topic.
Well, would you believe Donald Trump if he said that he believed in controlled demolition? I don't want him to attest to anything that I believe in.
Mm-hmm. It's true. He's likely just to muddy the waters.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you for speaking out, and we're going to have all of the links located in the description below, because I'm sure they need everyone's help at this stage in the game. They just launched this inquiry, this petition rather, just a couple weeks ago on April 10th. So this is fresh. This is new. So we hope to see this come to a proper conclusion.
Wow. Good luck.
Yeah. Thank you.
To all of us.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.